All right, everyone. Good Wednesday evening on this August 26, 2020, as we are talking about Hurricane Laura, Major Hurricane Laura, as it approaches landfall over the next few hours. Looking to be tracking just at the extreme southwest portion of southwestern Louisiana, where forecasts had been having it on the Texas-Louisiana border if we keep on this current heading, as we can see on the satellite imagery, kind of making a beeline for this southwestern, very southwestern tip of Louisiana. So looking like a Louisiana landfall. But overall, a very powerful Category 4 hurricane, winds of 150 miles per hour. We'll go over the stats of the system in just a second. But again, a very serious situation for those in southern Louisiana and extreme eastern Texas as the storm continues to near its landfall late overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning. It's about 58 miles I last checked from, the northern eye wall is about 58 miles from the coast of Louisiana at last check on radar. So let's jump over to radar so we can see the most accurate view of the storm. Radar gives us the best sampling because it is, ground truth. It's what's happening. Satellite's looking from hundreds of thousands of miles above, but radar is showing us what's happening, in a quicker real time. So here, you can see the very well defined, structure of the hurricane. You can see the the eye wall. You can see all these rain bands wrapping on. You can see the very well defined system. And, this portion here where these, vibrant yellow colors are, that's where going to be where those hurricane force winds are, those up to 150 mile per hour force winds are going to reside within the storm. And that, landfall occurs when the center of the circulation crosses over land. So even well before landfall, conditions will begin to deteriorate along southwestern Louisiana coast and around Calcasieu Lake and Sabine Pass and areas such as that, as the hurricane continues wobbling and tracking its way toward the west, or the northwest, I should say. So looking at the overall statistics we have, this is from Dr. Brian Norcross, former hurricane specialist with the Weather Channel. Winds of 150 miles per hour, that's 1 minute sustained winds, moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour, and the pressure is down to 940 millibars. So if you were watching the video last night, it was down to 978, I believe it was, or possibly 9, I don't remember exactly what it was, but again, it's seen about a 47 millibar drop in 24 hours, which is just remarkable in terms of rapid intensification. Kind of the worst case scenario realized for this area and for the Gulf of Mexico. When you have storms with this kind of shallow warm water, they just kind of explode and go off. So unfortunately that worst case scenario has materialized, and we will see how those areas fare. But it looks like a very extremely dangerous hurricane as it takes aim at the northwest Gulf Coast. Catastrophic storm surge, extreme winds, and flash flooding expected along the northwest Gulf Coast tonight. Those are the key headlines from the National Hurricane Center. We're well aware of the warnings and watches that are hoisted at this time. And then the eye diameter is about 30 miles. Tropical storm force winds extend up to 300 miles out, and hurricane force winds extend up to just over 100 miles out. And the main thing to take away here, we know there's a hurricane. We know it's approaching the Gulf Coast, so not really focusing that much on the track anymore. The impacts are going to be evident. But one thing I do want to point out is that for those listening in North Carolina, where I believe the majority of you are from, the storm will approach the area as a tropical depression, possibly a post-tropical tropical depression, which it really has no implications on the intensity of the system, but it will be in a much weakened state from what it is now. But it will spark off some rain and showers and potentially heavy rain and gusty winds come Saturday for both Virginia and North Carolina, and West Virginia as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on the remnants of Laura as it moves eastward after trekking inward to the over Louisiana, Arkansas, up through the Mississippi River corridor, and then drifting east and then going back over sea, could possibly re-attain post-tropical storm strength, which doesn't necessarily mean it's re-strengthening, but kind of a transition of the inner core of the system, and then can drift all the way up through Nova Scotia and Labrador, Newfoundland, all the way up here. So into the North Atlantic. So a very long-lived system. Impacts aren't limited to just Louisiana tonight. It goes inland, and there's a lot of impacts to be felt otherwise. Storm surge is the main threat with this system, and it's the most immediate threat, with winds being second most. It is moving north-northwest at 15 miles per hour, which is certainly good news in terms of its forward speed, not lingering around for terribly long and causing a lot of freshwater flooding with heavy rains. The bigger concern is the saltwater inundation from the storm surge. So that is what we have to look out for, especially in areas like Lake Charles. Okay, we have the fixation on the system here, and then this is by 3 UTC, and then this is later tonight. These deep red colors indicating multiple feet of water above the. So this particular model is showing water height above nav D88, which is essentially just take it as sea level for this point. And right in Cameron and Holly Beach, Cameron, Grand Chenier, and areas like that along this Louisiana Route 27 corridor are really going to feel the brunt of the storm surge. And to quickly jump aside, this is what happened during Hurricane Rita back in 2005. This is a community of Holly Beach, Louisiana, before Rita. On the top you can see these buildings and houses and the community here, and this is after Rita. I don't have timestamps for these images or these dates, but this is a couple of days after Rita, when the weather cleared and we're able to take storm photos. You can see the scouring and the path of the storm with that. And unfortunately, Holly Beach has rebuilt in that same position, in that same standing, and we'll have to note all the floodwaters too up here, in the wetland habitat. Still a lot of standing water after that, and that's something that the Hurricane Center has noted. They said storm surge is going to come in and it could penetrate up to 40 miles inland up to Lake Charles, Louisiana, and it's not going to recede very quickly. It's going to take a long time to recede and level back out into the Gulf of Mexico. So that is certainly concerning for, we've seen things like this happen before, and the magnitude to the storm surge currently projecting, up to 15 to 20 feet of storm surge with Laura. With it being such a large storm, you can imagine if this large storm is pushing all of this water and rotating up this way. And if I change the color here, rotating up this way, you're going to have a lot of water being pushed up against the Louisiana coast, and that's precisely what's happening. You have Calcasieu Lake right here, you have Cameron right in here, Grand Lake over here. So all this area, all this water is being pushed up against the coast, and then it has nowhere to go. Once it gets in here, it just has to feed back down the river. But with things being, it just kind of stops up the whole hydrological system when these hurricanes and these large storms make landfall. The good news is that Galveston Bay, Trinity Bay area does look to be just outside of the worst impacts of the system, and there is a northerly wind on this side of the system coming out of the north, coming down to the south. So that is pushing water out actually before water begins to kind of push in. So storm surge threats should really kind of be held at bay, no pun intended, for that area, and should be minimized. But anywhere directly to the center of the storm and to the right of the eye is going to be critically impacted, and some very devastating storm surge impacts are going to be felt in this area. So I'm going to take a little break here and look at the comments. Let's see here. Hi everyone who's joined. There's too many to name individually, but thanks for joining. Just wanted to do a discussion tonight on Hurricane Laura, a catastrophic Category 4 hurricane, kind of reaching the maximum threshold between Category 4 and Category 5. Certainly a storm to take seriously. It's rapidly intensified into a serious situation for southwestern Louisiana and inland as well from heavy rains and flooding threats, but the main threat being the massive storm surge expected along the coast. And speaking of which, we can jump over to this tidesandcurrents.noaa.gov, which is a very interesting website that will be interesting to watch tonight. We have Lake Charles, a city of over 70,000 people up the Calcasieu River. So if I jump back here again, you can see if I zoom in, this water inundation is expected to go right over Holly Beach, Cameron, Creole, Grand Chenier, up through Calcasieu River, Calcasieu Lake, Hackberry, up through Carolus, Prion, and Lake Charles. A lot of these areas have not been, have not seen this kind of surge since Rita, and even before Rita. These surge levels are more in line with Hurricane Katrina in terms of just the sheer magnitude of the forecast. Just kind of makes your eyes pop out and say, 15 to 20 feet of surge, that's tremendous, and it is, and that's exactly what's expected with this system. So a potentially a catastrophic situation in terms of storm surge for these areas, particularly Lake Charles, is right under the scope of potentially the worst impacts for the system in terms of, a population center receiving the worst impacts. Along the coast here, you have the combination of extreme winds, storm surge, and just a disaster unfolding for these areas, unfortunately, as it continues to intensify as it approaches the coast. So jumping back over to this tides and current, we can see that all of these little flashing pins are stations that are currently reporting, and we can look at a few of these that are on the coast and see. Excuse me. Let's see here. Loading. It may be a little slow due to the traffic on the website. A lot of people looking. Here we go. So this blue line indicates the normal tidal cycle, and the tide is not huge here because of the elevation here is at or just below sea level, so you don't have a huge tidal difference, maybe about a foot or two. But what I want you to focus on is the red line here. So if we toggle back here, you can see that the water was slightly elevated above the normal tidal cycle, and then all of a sudden it starts ticking up, and the red line is going into the minor flooding stage, continuing to rise. And unfortunately, Hurricane Laura is expected to make landfall as high tide is leveling out, and will stay that way for a couple of hours. So it'll be very critical to watch this line jump into the moderate flooding stage, the major flooding stage, and unfortunately just see how high it goes before it levels off and begins to recede. And we can also, that's at Calcasieu Pass, and then we can also jump up here to actual Lake Charles and see the same thing once this decides to load, of the storm surge raising or continuing to rise when the storm is still over 50 miles offshore. So certainly a critically dangerous situation, and doesn't look like it's going to load for us, probably because it's under great duress from many people viewing this website. But overall, just a serious situation. And okay, here's an example where we have forecast guidance showing the spike, and this is showing minor flooding all the way up here in Bulk Terminal, Louisiana, may over the next 48 hours. So this is a very interesting site to watch, and I will be watching this through the evening and seeing what all occurs. But overall, in terms of the impacts from the storm, we have the wind threat, storm surge threat, flooding rain threat, and tornado threat. The tornado threat is limited to this small area to the east of the circulation. When the storms come on land, they encounter friction and they begin to rotate a little bit. You can get those quick spin ups. You remember in Bertie County, North Carolina, we had a EF3 tornado, which is remarkably strong for a tropical system, with Hurricane Isaias last month. So tornadoes within tropical systems can be relatively uncommon, and they're very small in terms of their impact or their size, their spatial impact, but they can be very devastating if the right conditions manifest and you have those embedded within the overall threat of the wind as well. So just a very dangerous situation setting up for south central Louisiana tonight. Flooding rain threat extends well inland up through Arkansas and up through the Mississippi River Valley. Storm surge threat again is concentrated down here, this purple indicating storm surge greater than 9 feet above ground. You have to take a second to realize that the average man, I guess, is 6 feet tall, is 3 feet above your head. So that's enough to carry cars away easily and cause just very bad destruction. So that's something we'll have to watch out for and see how southwestern Louisiana fares. And the wind threat, of course, this thing is packing 150 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts a little bit higher possible, and it's still continuing to intensify as it approaches land. So we'll have to watch out for that and see how the wind is, and that's something that could still impact Beaumont, Port Arthur, Lake Charles area. If we zoom in here, and this website cooperates with us, it was a little slow earlier. We have Port Arthur, we have Beaumont, we have Orange, Texas, Sabine Lake, along the Sabine River, all the communities in Vinton, Sulphur, Louisiana. Lake Charles again seems to be the kind of ground zero for this storm. So that's something we'll have to look out for. So again, thanks to everyone for watching. I kind of wanted to wrap up here. Not really much more to discuss in terms of it's just a terrible situation unfolding. That's kind of the summary of the forecast here. But it is continuing to intensify up until landfall. You can even notice that sometimes so a little more advanced meteorology here, but within the eye wall of the storm, if I can stop, well, I'll leave it animating to discuss this. It's not perfectly cylindrical or not perfectly circular. You'll note that sometimes there's these what we call trochoidal wobbles and these eddies within the system. So you have a circular eye, and then you have these little eddies within the eye that continue to kind of spin up, and you'll have little rotations within the center, and that's indicative of a very, very intense tropical cyclone and a lot of vertical mixing, a lot of a vertically stacked profile and a column of air that's violently rotating. So the same thing was seen in Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Michael in the past couple of years. Very intense cyclone headed towards southwestern Louisiana. Unfortunately, likely to be in some very esteemed company in the hurricane world, and some very big names that kind of just elicit dread when you say their names. But unfortunately, that's what Laura is shaping up to be as it approaches the southwestern Louisiana and extreme southeastern Texas coast. Again, that is all I really wanted to do for this video. I'll continue pushing out updates as they are relevant. And for now, we'll just say a prayer for the people in southwestern Louisiana and hope that everyone evacuated, because it's going to be a very long and dangerous night for all of those people. If you have any questions, feel free to message me or comment on Facebook, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. But for now, stay safe, and we will await the remnants of Laura to arrive in North Carolina, or somewhere over North Carolina or Southern Virginia over the next few days, particularly on Saturday, and we'll see if it has enough gusto left in it to bring us rain showers and thunderstorms. But for now, we'll wait to see Hurricane Laura make landfall, and stay safe for now, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.